Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this new moment right now. This Sunday, I want to speak on the Essenes. Someone gave me, many years ago, a little book, The Essene Gospel of Peace. And I was so touched by this book. I think it was 1988 or something. It's my various book. I was so touched by the teachings of the Essenes. And this book was written by Dr. Edmund Bordeaux-Szekely. I hope I said that right. And he got his PhD from the University of Paris for writing this. This is what he did his dissertation on. And he says that it is a translation of Aramaic texts, ancient sacred Aramaic texts that he found at the Vatican, in the Vatican Library. Excuse me. Back in 1923. And so this Essene Gospel of Peace was published in 26 languages. It's been there's been millions and millions of copies of it. So I wanted to share today about the Essenes and who they were and how their teaching is appropriate for us today. And it seems uncertain exactly when the Essenes came on the scene. Some archaeologists say it was about 200 years before Christ. Some say it was maybe 500 years before Christ. And yet, when you read the Dead Sea Scrolls and you read the writings that they found on the Essenes, it looks like they had ties to ancient Egypt. It looks like they actually went way farther back in history. And it has been said that Moses was an Essene. It's been said that John the Baptist was an Essene, that Jesus' parents were Essenes, and that possibly Jesus was an Essene, or that he was deeply influenced by the Essenes, which is interesting to contemplate. I think it's Pope Benedict, I forget which number, the recent Pope Benedict said that Jesus had the Last Supper in an Essene house, in the Essene family, which I thought was pretty interesting. So, with the discovery in 1947 of the Dead Sea Scrolls, we learned a lot more about the Essenes. The Dead Sea Scrolls were these sacred ancient documents that were found in the caves in Qumran, in northern Israel. And the saying goes that there was a shepherd out walking near those caves in Qumran, and he lost one of his sheep, and he wandered into this cave, and he discovered these ancient Egyptian vase-like containers, and that in those containers were all these scrolls. And there were some fascinating scrolls. Over 900 documents were found, ancient, sacred documents. And one of them was written in copper. Can you imagine? I thought that was really interesting, writing in copper. And the Essenes were said to have written a lot of these documents, but also it looked like they were actually preserving documents from way back. And they were traveling around and about, and they were, trying to preserve these documents so that we might find them, years later, after all the wars and all the earth events, that we might be able to find them. And sure enough, we did find them. The Gospel of Thomas, and a real variety. Another day I want to give a talk on the Dead Sea Scrolls. Actually, you could spend the whole year giving a talk on that. But for now, I just want to focus on the Essenes because they are an amazing people. They really are. They were one of three sects in Judaism. There were the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Essenes, and they were a smaller group. And as I study their philosophy, I feel such a kinship with them. And I just feel like they were ahead of their time, or they were out of their time. They were like from some other time, and they just were so advanced in their way of believing and living. And one of the most impressive things about the Essenes that really touched me is they were the first and perhaps only people ever to condemn slavery. And they were all about equality. The women and men were equal. And if you wanted to move and live in this Essene society, you brought what you had and it got distributed equally. And so there wasn't rich and poor. There wasn't this inequality. they were deeply focused on taking care of each other. In fact, I found it really interesting when I read that they would wash each other's feet as a way of taking care of each other. I thought that was so interesting because, Jesus washed the disciples' feet. We have that story. And, when you think about why did Jesus wash the disciples' feet, a lot of people say it's for him to express his humility. But I also think that's so beautiful from the Essene teaching, that it's a way of taking care of each other, and a way of just saying, I'm here for you. And so many teachings that I read about the Essenes, it's like that's what Jesus taught, He really did teach about equality, He had women disciples, Men and women were equal, it seems to be, in his teachings. And he was also really eschewed greed. He really made a strong point about, how, when there's greed and there's covetousness of wealth, that blinds us from the kingdom within, from the true kingdom, from the kingdom of heaven, from the kingdom of consciousness. And it's very much the Essene teachings. Their spirituality, it was about developing 3 aspects of being. And I just mentioned those 3 aspects of being in our meditation. And those 3 aspects are the body, and the mind, and the feelings, the feeling nature. They were really about working on all 3 of those aspects. They really felt that thought was the highest force in the universe. And again, very, very much like Jesus' teachings and Charles Fillmore's teachings. He would have loved the Essenes. In fact, maybe he was an Essene. Who knows? I'd like to know, how much he studied the Essenes. I really don't know. But, they were really about the power of thought and using thought to create, and the powerful use of prayer. And they were very careful about what they put in their bodies. They were as careful about what they put in their bodies as what they put in their minds. For them, they were very careful about their mental food, right? Their mental diet, as well as their physical. They were vegetarians. They studied healing. They were very greatly advanced in the healing arts and developing psychic ability and astronomy and prophecy. They knew about healing herbs and plants. They were advanced in that art. And they felt that the earth, this is what I love, they felt the earth was a living, sentient being. They felt very connected to the earth, and they felt it was very important to stay connected and in communion with Mother Earth. Which brings me to, let me share with you a writing from the Essene Gospel of Peace that Dr. Bordeaux transcribes as Jesus speaking. I tell you in very truth, man is the son of the earthly mother, and from her did the Son of Man receive his whole body, even as the body of the newborn babe is born of the womb of its mother. I tell you truly, you are one with the earthly mother. She is in you, and you in her. Of her you were born, in her do you live, and to her shall you return again. Keep therefore her laws, for none can live long, neither be happy, but he who honors the earthly mother and does her laws. For your breath is her breath, your blood, her blood, your bone, her bone, your flesh, her flesh. Isn't that beautiful?
Amen.
What I find so beautiful about this view is that it's holistic. It includes the mother. The earthly mother to the Essenes is as important a giver of life as the Heavenly Father. There's that balance. In fact, I sense that the Trinity, as far as the Essenes go, is the Father, the Mother, and then the Son or daughter. The earthly mother and the Heavenly Father. That Trinity makes a lot of sense to me. Dr. Bordeaux was so moved by the teachings of the Essenes that he created a contemporary society of the Essenes in the early 19th century, I think somewhere around 1930s, 40s. He created a society called the Biogenic Society. And part of their credo states, we believe in the fatherhood of God, motherhood of nature, and brotherhood of man. Now, if you would have just added it and woman, it would be perfect. But the Essenes, as I say, they were a Jewish sect, but they were more a mystical sect. They were very mystical, and they were celibate, mostly. That's why there's so few of them. But they were celibate for the reason of focusing their energy on the inner life, on the spiritual life. And to join them, you had to meditate, like 3 years or something. You had to do like this long period of meditation where you reflect on your life, and you reflect on what your motivations have been, and you reflect on what angels have been guiding you, and what angels you've been receptive to. They're very into angels, and so I thought that was very interesting. I thought that was fascinating. They talk a lot about angels, and basically for them, angels are forces that be. Forces that be. So they speak about the angel of light, the angel of water, the angel of air, the angel of love, and the angel of darkness. And basically, they really ask you to consider what angels, you are following, what angels you are welcoming in, what energies or forces that be are we welcoming into our mind and into our heart and into our body and into our life. Now, I trust my intuition, and I use my intuition to decide what I'm going to speak on, And so last Monday, sometimes I'll just go stand in front of my bookcase, and I'll go, okay, angel of creativity, guide me. What should we speak on? What's helpful? What's going to be inspiring? And I just reached down in the corner of my bookcase, and there was that tiny little book, The Essene Gospel of Peace, and I just got that out, and I really felt, let's revisit the Essenes and their teaching. And then I reached up and grabbed this other book, and it was a great Braden book on the Isaiah effect, and I never read it. I've had it in my bookcase forever, and I thought, okay, Greg Braden, there's something about this book. And sure enough, I open it up, and it's all about, he's interpreting the Essenes, the whole book. So I was like, wow, thank you, God. I wasn't surprised, but I was delighted, because I really felt like there is something about the Essenes and who they were and their mystical teachings that I was supposed to tap into and share with you and sort of inspire us all to look into. So, in Greg's book, he describes how he's poring and poring over the Essene writings, and he's looking for the essential teaching, the pith teaching, and finally he sees it, and he's wowed by it. And the teaching basically is that the beginning of any healing must come from a state of peace. That's so simple, but let me say that again. The beginning of any healing must come from a state of peace. Think about it. So let me read you what wowed him, that moved him so much, that I think is very powerful from this Essene Gospel. First shall the Son of Man seek peace within his own body, for his body is as a mountain pond, and reflects the sun when it is still and clear. When it is full of mud and stones, it reflects nothing. Then shall the Son of Man seek peace within his own thoughts, for there is no greater power in heaven and earth than the thought of the Son of Man. Then shall the Son of Man seek peace within his own feelings. We call on the angel of love to come into our feelings, that they may be purified, and all that was before impatient and discord will turn into harmony and peace. So, he was wowed by this, and I get why, because it's such a simple recipe for how to live, how to live our daily life, Seek peace first in the body. Think about it. If you have a migraine, if your stomach is in knots, you're not going to be much good, right, for much of anything until you take care of your body and seek peace in the body. That's what they mean when they're talking about be clear like a mountain stream. And clear out the toxins and clear out the blockages. Okay? Health is wealth, so seek peace in the body. And, they focus on every cell being well. I have a song, Every Little Cell is Oh So Very Well. And I wrote that actually from a deep meditation I had one night about, really, we can, there's mind in every cell, okay? There's consciousness and mind in every cell. And we can bring light and peace into every cell. We can consciously do that. And then that next bit of guidance, to seek peace in our own thoughts, for there's no greater power on heaven or earth than thought. It's really important. And Greg goes in, he talks a great deal about the lost mode of prayer. Has anybody read the Isaiah Effect? It's really, it's powerful. But he talks about this fifth mode of prayer, this lost mode of prayer, and he says it's really important to pray for something by becoming it, to pray in a knowing way. It's really similar to affirmative prayer. When we say, so be it, right? When you say, so be it, it's like, let it be, bring it into being, know it into being. And then the third bit of guidance is seek peace in your own feelings, and do that by calling the angel of love to enter your feelings, that they may be purified. I love that. I've never heard it put that way. Let the angel of love come into your feelings. So I would like to suggest that we start our day like this, that we wake up, and before we interact with anybody, we take time to seek peace in our body. And let our body be at peace, and then seek peace in our thoughts, let our thoughts be at peace, and then seek peace in our emotional body, and bring that angel of love in, and then we're ready to walk out the door, right, and be an instrument of peace. So take a moment right now and turn to your neighbor and say, peace be with you. Turn to your other neighbor. See how simple that is? See how simple that is to create this vibration of peace here? It's so much better than me just standing up here saying, be at peace. Collectively, where two or more are gathered, when we seek peace and when we create peace, it's that simple. You just have a simple thought, be at peace, may you be at peace, right? Peace be with you. That's simple. And then you give it and you receive it and everything is shifted. It's so beautiful. From the Essenes, they say, seek the angel of peace in all that lives, in all you do, in every word you speak, for peace is the key to all knowledge, to all mystery, to all life. Now, September 13th is the World Day of Prayer, and we're going to have, I'm inviting you all to sit at either 8 in the morning or 8 at night, or both times, wherever you are. We're not going to actually do it here in the church, but wherever you are, I invite you to tune in to our group energy and sit at 8 in the morning or 8 at night or both for 15 minutes or longer and pray. And in the newsletter that Carmen printed and on the website, we have kind of a guided meditation for you to do. But, I was really inspired by Greg talking about prayer in his book so much, and talking about the old paradigm of prayer where we're beseeching. He has 4 modes he talked about, but the main one that I think needs to be upgraded is the beseeching or the begging. Like, God, if you just let me get to that gas station before my car runs out of gas, I will be a saint for the rest of my life. That kind of begging and beseeching. And, I know sometimes we're in despair. We plead for a higher power. I understand that. But there's a very powerful kind of spiritual technology. You've heard it in other words. But it's really about letting go of this old way of begging and beseeching, and coming from a place of humility and openness, but coming from a place where there is no lack, and we're not believing that the healing is not here already. In other words, praying where we are believing that possibility is here now. That, in that quantum field, all things are possible, right? So knowing that possibility for your highest healing and your highest good and your highest expression is waiting. It's right there. And so knowing it and feeling it and being it and resting in it, that is how we pray most effectively. versus, oh, things are so bad. I mean, that's such an affirmation. Please help me, things are so bad, you know. That tends to give energy to what is difficult, what is bad, what you're struggling with. I have a person in my life, for instance, that I pray for a lot, every day, sometimes a couple times a day. And, you know, I know their challenge of, you know, dealing with addiction. And I spend time seeing them, and I see them so at peace. I can see their face, there's no tension, there's no stress. There's this light, there's this joy, there's this peace, and they're free of addiction, they're happy, their life is on track. And I just spend time seeing them, and I let that be real for me. And I do feel like that is the most powerful way we can pray. And there's three things happening there. It's simple, but there's three things happening there that give power to this kind of praying. And they are, number one, I'm coming from a place of peace and wholeness in my thought. I'm coming from a place of peace. Okay, number two, I'm using the power of thought and mind to know this person's wholeness is. So I'm knowing this person is whole. Okay, I'm holding that. And then the third thing, I'm feeling. I'm using the feelings and emotions to know this healing is not only possible, but it's real for me right now. Okay? And that's how we bring it into being. It sounds simple. But, you know, we have to sometimes upgrade our old mold of praying, you know, that mold we learned, you know, back in our early days in the Baptist church, or, you know, upgrade. There's a teaching from Jesus in the original Aramaic about the importance of going into a knowing state about the future. That really says what I'm trying to say here. In John chapter 14, verse 23. All things that you ask straightly, directly, from inside my name, you will be given. So far you have not done this. Ask without hidden motive, and be surrounded by your answer. Be enveloped by what you desire, that your gladness be full. And that is really the key. Be enveloped by what you desire. Let yourself swim in it. Let yourself just feel it fully is real. That's really what it is when we say, and so it is. And so it is. But it can't just be the mind. It can't just be the words. It has to be feeling. You have to really go there. It has to be real on every level. So, in closing, I would like to invite you to explore the Essenes teachings. I hope I've piqued your interest a little bit, because I spent all week with my big, giant screen TV looking at all these fantastic YouTube videos on the Essenes. And there's a lot out there. Some of it is more academic and theosophical. It can feel a little dry, but I think it's important to balance that with what's mystical and, you know, the Edgar Casey teachings, and just such a variety. But it's really inspiring. And most of all, I would like you to consider being peace, and consider consciously making an effort to, maybe multiple times throughout the day, see if your body's at peace. Are your shoulders relaxed? Drop them down a little bit. Are your shoulders relaxed? Are you breathing the angel of air? It's beautiful to think of it that way, the angel of air. You know, living in Mount Shasta, to me, in those beautiful lakes, it's easy to feel that I'm surrounded by the angel of water. But you can take a bath or take a shower and really tune into the angel of water, that energy, that nourishing energy. The angel of sunlight, you know, we don't have to make the sun the enemy. I think, you know, with all this about cancer and sunscreen and all, the sun is not the enemy. The sun is life-giving. We would not be alive without the sun. So opening up to the angel of light. So may peace be with you, every one of you. May peace be with all of our loved ones that are here, that are passed on. May peace be in our politics. May peace be in our country. May peace be in our world. May peace be in our universe. May all beings everywhere be happy and be at peace. Let us feel the reality of that. Let us feel it right now. Just take a moment and see white flower petals. just falling all over the earth. And everybody's like, wow, white flower petals are falling. And everybody just is overwhelmed with grace and peace and well-being. Let it be. Feel it. Make it real. Thank you all. God bless.